Car sitting in a driveway with the engine running. Wasteful, pointless. Just turn it off. But have you ever pulled into a highway rest stop at 2 a.m. and noticed an entire row of semi-trucks, all parked, all rumbling? Every single one of them, running, not going anywhere. Why does a parked truck need its engine on? Is the driver even awake? Isn't this illegal? And what actually happens if they just shut it off? The answer isn't laziness, it's survival engineering. But the real reason goes a lot deeper than staying warm. Here's the thing most people miss. A semi-truck isn't just a big vehicle. It's a rolling apartment, a refrigerated warehouse on wheels, and a machine built around a 13-liter diesel engine that has very specific feelings about being shut off in the cold. The cab has a sleeper berth, a full bunk in the back where drivers are legally required to rest for 10 hours between shifts under federal hours of service rules. That's not a suggestion, that's the law. So when that truck is parked at a rest stop, the driver is essentially home for the night. And that engine idling? It's running the heat, the air conditioning, the power outlets, and sometimes the entire refrigerated trailer hooked behind it. So when the truck is parked, it's actually still working. But here's where people get it wrong. The common reaction is just turn it off and start it back up in the morning. That's what everyone else does. A car does it fine. But a diesel engine isn't a Toyota Camry, not even close. Diesel engines don't use spark plugs. They use compression, squeezing air so hard it gets hot enough to ignite the fuel on its own. That process needs heat to work well. A cold start in freezing temperatures means incomplete burning, extra strain on the cylinders, and wear on engine parts before the oil has even warmed up and spread around properly. One widely shared idea among fleet mechanics, though it's debated, is that a cold start below freezing puts wear on the engine equal to hundreds of miles of normal driving. That's like adding a full day's worth of highway miles every single morning before the truck even leaves the parking lot. Every cold start in winter is a small act of violence against the engine. But engine wear is actually the secondary reason. Here's the first. The sleeper cab is a real living space with real power demands. In January, a truck stop in Minnesota or Wyoming can drop to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. That's cold enough to freeze diesel fuel in the lines if the engine shuts off completely. The idle runs the heat. It keeps the driver alive in a very literal sense. But there's another layer most people never think about. A large number of long-haul truck drivers use CPAP machines at night, the breathing devices used by people with sleep apnea. No engine running means no power means no CPAP. And a driver who can't use their medical equipment isn't just uncomfortable. They're a safety risk on the road the next morning. So the idle is partly a medical necessity. Then there's the trailer. Refrigerated trailers, called reefers, carry everything from fresh strawberries to insulin to flu vaccines. They need to stay at exact temperatures, and sometimes as precise as 34 degrees the whole night. If the engine cuts off and the trailer warms up, the cargo is lost. That's thousands of dollars of medicine or produce gone in a few hours. But here's where it gets crazy. It's not just comfort or cargo, it's the law. More than 30 states have anti-idling laws. But federal rules carve out specific exceptions for exactly these situations: sleeper berths in extreme temperatures, medical equipment, and temperature-sensitive cargo. So the truck idling all night isn't an oversight. It's following one law while legally navigating an exception in another. One parked truck, two sets of rules, both applying at the same time. Now here's the part that sharpens the picture. Not all truck drivers face this problem. Day cab drivers, the ones doing local routes and going home every night, park, lock up and leave. Their trucks don't have sleeper berths. No one's sleeping inside, no idle needed. But long-haul sleeper drivers live a completely different life. That truck is their home. Idling overnight is the same as leaving your apartment's heater running while you sleep. You wouldn't turn it off and freeze, neither would they. The solution the industry came up with is called an APU, an auxiliary power unit. Think of it as a small separate generator, roughly the size of a large suitcase, bolted onto the side of the truck. It runs the heat, AC, and power without firing up the main engine. Cleaner, more efficient, smart design. But here's the catch. An APU costs between $8,000 and $12,000 installed. That's a suitcase-sized box that costs as much as a used car. Not every driver, Especially independent owner-operators running on tight margins can absorb that upfront cost. Therefore, the main engine keeps running. The math is brutal. Idling burns roughly 1 gallon of diesel per hour. At current prices, that's $4 to $5 a night. Across a fleet of 1,000 trucks, that adds up to millions of dollars a year in fuel just for sleeping. The APU exists entirely because of that math. But not everyone can afford the solution yet. This is the part everyone misses. Trucking hasn't always looked like this. Go back to the early days of long-haul freight in America. The 1940s, 2-lane highways, no interstates, diners every 50 miles. Drivers slept in the seat or paid for a motel room. There were no sleeper berths. But then the interstate highway system started going in during the late 1950s. And suddenly runs got longer, much longer. You could drive from Chicago to Los Angeles without stopping for a town. Sleeper cabs started showing up in the 1960s to match those longer routes. And the diesel engines of that era were genuinely brutal about cold starts. So brutal that mechanics at truck depots would drain the oil out of engines at night, store it warm indoors, and pour it back in before the morning start. That's not a joke. That was the actual solution. Idling overnight was a massive improvement over that. So by the 1970s and 1980s, running the engine all night was simply how it was done. It was baked deep into trucking culture, into maintenance habits, into the way fleets trained new drivers. And here's the problem with deeply baked habits. They outlast the original reason. Better oil technology, better engine design, may and AP us change the math, but the behavior stayed. Here's the surprise. You've been touching this system your whole life without knowing it. That banana you ate in January? It rode in a refrigerated trailer that idled overnight at a distribution center somewhere in the South. That Amazon order that showed up cold on a hot July afternoon? Reefer truck running all night at a fulfillment center. The insulin at your local pharmacy? Cold chain logistics, idle dependent every step of the way. The weird diesel smell you noticed at a highway rest area on a family road trip? That was a cluster of drivers sleeping legally, doing their required 10-hour break with the heat running. The price of groceries at your store? Partly built from fuel costs, and idle fuel is part of that number. If you've ever used a CPAP machine, the same device is running off idle power in sleeper cabs tonight across the country. Those no idle signs you might have seen at certain truck stops? They exist because of the complicated 30-state patchwork of anti-idle laws, shore power hookups, basically outdoor electrical outlets that let trucks plug in like a phone charger, were invented specifically to replace idling at rest stops. An entire company called Idle Air built a network of these hookups and sold them as a service before eventually going bankrupt, because the solution was right but the timing was too early. Fleet GPS systems now flag idle time automatically as a cost metric because dispatchers watch it like a fuel leak. Every cold chain product in the refrigerated section of your grocery store, the cheese, the yogurt, the pre-made meals, stayed cold partly because a truck somewhere kept running through the night. Now for the real trade-off. Diesel exhaust from idling isn't nothing. It puts fine particles into the air near rest stops and truck terminals, which is why neighborhoods close to freight corridors pushed for those anti-idle laws in the first place. That's a real concern, and it's fair. A fleet of 1,000 trucks idling 8 hours a night is burning roughly 8,000 gallons of diesel while going absolutely nowhere. The good news is the industry is actively changing. Electric APUs powered by batteries are getting better. Shore power infrastructure is expanding along major freight corridors. Some newer trucks have automatic engine shutdown systems that kick in when conditions allow. Now, electric semi-trucks are still early, but they're coming, and they change the idle equation completely because their cab systems run off the battery pack, not the engine. The idling habit is genuinely shrinking, but it's shrinking slowly because the gap between we have a better solution and every driver can afford the better solution is still wide. So here's where you land. You pulled into that rest stop thinking you were looking at waste, laziness, a bad habit that nobody bothered to fix. But what you were actually looking at was a federal rest requirement, diesel engine physics, a medical device running in the back of a cab, a trailer full of temperature-sensitive cargo, a 70-year-old industry habit with very logical roots, and an infrastructure problem that's still being solved one truck stop at a time. That sound you used to find annoying? That's the hum of the system that stocked your fridge this morning. And if you think trucks are complicated, Wait until we get into why almost everything in that fridge survived a 2,000-mile journey at exactly 34 degrees.